Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So today is market update time and we're going to take a look at what is happening, what is changing week over week in the market, from authorities to English language proficiency to diesel prices and then spot rates and volumes. But before we get into this video, I do have one question for you guys. Let me know if you still want me to make videos going through the charts, or would you rather that I just post the charts every week on my website where you can go through them without kind of a video going along with it. Anyway, let me know in the comments, but let's get into this week's market update. Ready? Let's go. All right, all the charts are going to be attached right here. This week, I decided to remove some of the redundant data that we look at. You know, we look at one thing several different times from several different angles. So today we're starting with the net change in authorities. How many carriers came in versus left as of last week? The net change in authorities is 52 carriers gained. So more carriers came in than left. And if you take a look at this chart, you can see that the red line, which shows total gained, it sharply went up. So more people filed to get an MC as of last week, which is partially why we saw an increase. The total lost is continuing to increase, as you can see in the green. All right, let's take a look at what is happening with those ELPs, or English language proficiency violations and out of service orders. So as of October 27th, you can see in the blue the amount of violations and in the pink the amount of out of service orders. Now, there are a few things to notice. First of all, this is up to October 27th, but the one thing that I can see right away is that we are not going to reach September levels of violations or out of service orders, it seems. Number two, the difference between the amount of violations versus out of service orders is small. So more and more violations are resulting in an out of service order. Just so you can see more specifically, this is weekly data, 548 violations, 508 out of service orders. This is not including border zone carriers, of course. And in terms of the percentage, 92.7%. That is how many violations result in an out of service order. All right, let's move on to fuel prices. No good news here. As you can see, everything is red. So currently, as of right now, the average fuel price is $3.68 per gallon, which is 5.4 cents higher than last week, 0.4 cents higher than last month, and almost 11 cents higher than last year. If we take a look at the maps, last week versus this week, this is last week, this is this week, you can see the map got darker, which means that, of course, prices increased. This is, again, price at the pump. The most expensive is California, $5.13 per gallon. And in general, it's the West Coast and the Northeast that is more expensive. If you take a look at the minus IFTA prices, also, this is last week, this is this week, it got darker, of course. But in this case, if we remove IFTA, the most expensive is actually the state of Washington, $4.41 per gallon without tax. California is at $4.16 per gallon. Okay, let's move on to see what is going on with these rates. As of last week, reefer rates were at $2.46 per mile on the spot market on average, flatbeds at $2.34, dry vans at $1.94. Okay, let's take a look at the breakdown. Highest rate per mile for dry van, West Virginia, $2.89. Now, I'm going to remind everyone of this. This particular chart that we're looking at, it's just an informational chart. It's not telling you where the best area is for your equipment type. It's just for information. All right, so we talked about the highest rate per mile for dry van. Lowest is Idaho, $1.15. This is based on posted rates on the load board. Highest volume is Texas, lowest volume is Delaware, and most versatile state is Texas for dry vans. For reefers, the highest rate per mile was from Vermont on average this week. Lowest was Maryland. Texas is the highest volume. The volume is absolutely ridiculous, as you can see. Rhode Island had one load, putting it at the lowest volume state, and most versatile was Texas. For flatbeds, $4.69 came out of Delaware on average. Massachusetts $1.53. Alabama still has the highest volume. Rhode Island is the lowest, and Alabama is still the most versatile state. All right, let's take a look at what's going on with those reefers, loads versus trucks. As you can see, most loads come out of Texas, followed by Illinois for reefers. But trucks, they end up in California, funny enough, in Mississippi, in Texas, and in Florida. Now, in terms of the rate per mile map, what you're going to see this week is that there are a lot of places that are gray. No rates posted, so I couldn't average them out. And this has to do with volume. We'll get into volume in just a minute. Now, the highest rate per mile was from Vermont, but as you can see, there are only two regions that the loads were posted to, the Northeast as well as the South. Now, the most versatile was Texas. There are loads going everywhere, but the average rate per mile was $2.16. If you're going to the Midwest, you're looking at $1.65 on average. If you're trying to go to the West Coast with a reefer, and by the way, these are all full truckloads. They're considered full loads, not partials. If you're going to the West Coast, $1.19, which is very, very sad. All right, let's take a look at the overview, which is going to help us figure out the best areas and is going to help us figure out the week over week comparison. The first thing you're going to notice here is the fact that if you look at the load volume this week compared to last week, it's all red. Volume really decreased significantly for all equipment types, as we're going to see. In terms of rates, 3 out of the 5 regions saw rate decreases, with the exception of the Northeast, which saw a 3 cent per mile increase on average, and the southern states, which saw about a 5 cent per mile increase on average. Now, when trying to figure out the best place to go, you want to put together the average rate per mile plus the volume, right? The highest volume for reefers comes out of the Midwest, and it also coincides with the highest rate per mile. So I would say the Midwest is the best bet, just simply because you are able to, first of all, have something to choose from, and second of all, you're able to get a higher rate per mile. All right, same thing, but for dry vans. In terms of loads, most loads come out of Texas, California, some of the Midwest, and Georgia. Trucks go to Texas, California, and Florida for the most part. Rate per mile, also more gray areas than usual. Again, it has to do with those volumes. Virginia had the highest rate per mile, $2.89, but that was just because there were 1 or 2 loads posted to the Northeast. The most versatile state was Texas, but the average rate per mile is $1.81. If you want a higher in quotes rate per mile from Texas, you're looking to go to the plain states. Usually it's Texas to Texas. The gross is not there because the miles are short, but the rate is $2.17. What about the week over week comparison? Well, yeah, for dry vans, all of the states experienced a loss of volume, as you can see, week over week. And 3 of the 5 regions experienced a decrease in rates, with the exception of the Midwest that went up 3 cents per mile. The southern region stayed at $2 per mile on average. In terms of where the best place to go, or where is the best place to stay in, I would say it's also the Midwest. You can see the volume is higher and the rate per mile is higher for dry vans. All right, finally, last but not least, we have our flatbeds. These are the loads. Most loads come out of Alabama, followed by Texas. Trucks go mostly to Texas. In terms of the rate per mile map, again, this is it's not as empty, but it's emptier than it usually is. The most versatile state was Alabama, and the average rate per mile is $2.49 per mile, with the highest going to the South, right? Short miles usually, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, and so on and so forth. The lowest is going to the West Coast, $2.07 per mile. Now, if we take a look at week over week, 4 out of the 5 regions saw a decrease in volume, with the exception of the West Coast, which increased by 600 something loads. loads, it seems like. Now, in terms of the rate per mile, 3 out of the 5 regions saw a decrease in the rate per mile. What is the best area for flatbeds? Well, it might seem like it's the Northeast because the rate per mile is higher there. I wouldn't recommend it. You have to remember the tolls, the cost of fuel, and also the fact that the loads usually go from Northeast to Northeast. You kind of get stuck in a loop when you're in the Northeast or when you're in the West Coast. Now, the southern states have the second highest rate per mile, $2.49, and the volume is there, 12,505 loads. So yeah, for flatbeds, I recommend staying in the South. All right, now we're going to quickly touch upon what the heck is happening. What is happening with volumes? What is happening with rates? What is happening with the load board? Because I think we are all noticing at this point in a lot of areas, not all. There are still areas where the loads are flying off the load board, but what I'm noticing more and more of is a lot of very, very crappy rates posted with no one taking them, no one even viewing those loads. Yet the broker is not easy to negotiate with. How could it be that capacity, if it is leaving in the numbers that are reported in the media, how is it possible that rates are not budging, the posted rates, right? And sometimes decreasing in a lot of places. Well, it's simple. When we talk about rates not budging, we have to remember that brokers, when they were getting that load, they went to their customer and they told the customer, this is what it's going to move at. Now, even if capacity is increasing, the broker has two choices. If no one is taking loads at the posted rates or slightly higher rates than the posted rates, the broker has two choices. Either they go back to their customer and say, it's not moving, raise the price, and then lets it go for a higher rate, or the broker can eat the cost. The broker is not very excited about eating the cost because that affects their business. The broker is definitely not excited about having to go back to their customer and asking for a higher rate after bidding on the load already, because that poses the risk of losing that customer. So brokers are very, very hard to negotiate with. They really do not want to budge on the rates right now because they believe they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? Which one do you choose? The question of what happens if they're just not able to move that load at the posted price, doesn't that affect the customer? That's the one question I haven't been able to answer yet, but with flatbeds, it's not like reefers, right? And with flatbeds, they have more time to move the load. With reefers, it's usually expedite. It has to go out now. With flatbeds, it's different. They have time to move that load, and it is possible that brokers are just waiting for carriers to be a little bit more accepting of the low rates on the load board. So my recommendation for you guys, even though the market is not easy right now, it is very challenging. The load volumes are kind of a slap in the face. I have not yet been able to identify the exact reasons as to what happened to the market since the beginning of October, really, because it was in the beginning of October that volume started decreasing. But nevertheless, it is hard to miss the fact that the loads that are posted are not flying off the load board as much as they used to. So my recommendation for you guys is to just be aware, have situational awareness that something is changing in the market. Brokers are having a harder time. Don't panic book. This is what I'm trying to get at. Don't panic book because you're afraid you're going to be left without a load. This is the time to kind of stand your ground, have a rate in mind that is going to cover your costs per mile, that is going to earn you the profit that you are looking to earn, although I know that for me, it's very hard to get to the profit I'm looking to earn, but sensible rates, right? Hold your ground and do not operate under the umbrella of, oh my God, if I don't agree to this low rate, I am going to be stuck without a load. It would be a tragedy to see a market start changing and then carriers being the reason why the rates continue to be low. In short, say no to cheap freight, clean and simple. Anyway, wishing you all a fantastic rest of your day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and keep learning. See you in the next video.